With the dream of becoming the first female firefighter, a young woman dresses as a man and enlists to fight a criminal who wants to destroy New York. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Fireheart, from 2022. After his wife perished during childbirth, firefighter Sean even tried to continue working in firefighting while taking care of his daughter, but he couldn't reconcile the two and decided to end his career and start working as a tailor. Despite this, Georgia dreams of following in her father's footsteps and becoming the best firefighter in New York, which is why she spends her days playing with her dog Amber. Even with her father's successful career, Georgia doesn't seem to have the same gift and fails at every try, almost injuring herself several times. To make her give up her dream, Sean talks to his daughter and argues that it's still 1920 and that's why women are forbidden to become firefighters. Feeling that everything is unfair, Georgia says that she wants to save people just like her father, forcing Sean to be tougher and say that she will never become a firefighter. Determined to prove him wrong, Georgia waits for her father to go to sleep and goes to the top of the building to improvise a training camp. 10 years later, a group of firefighters responds to a fire in a theater and approaches the auditorium, noticing a curtain of colored smoke and strange music in the background. As they are approaching the fire, the team leader asks them to prepare the hoses and opens the door to the auditorium, but as soon as they enter, the firefighters' eyes start to glow and they all go into a kind of hallucination. At home, Georgia and her father are working together as tailors, meeting the demands of all the neighbors. While working, they listen to the radio and learn about the attack by the criminal known as the arsonist, as well as the disappearance of the firefighters. When they've finished work, father and daughter go to the front of the house for ice cream when a fire truck passes the door, which makes Sean say he's relieved now that she no longer has the dream of fighting fires. Unbeknownst to him, every night Georgia waits for her father to go to bed and goes out onto the terrace to train, improving her skills with the dream of one day becoming a firefighter. While the girl is training, Mayor Jimmy arrives in front of the apartment and starts talking to Sean. Curious, Georgia comes down from the building and hides under the car listening to the mayor talk about the arsonist's crimes. The man then tells him that all the firefighters have disappeared and that Sean is his last hope of solving this mystery. Although reluctant, Sean accepts and says he will need a team, asking the mayor for a chemist and a driver. The next day, Sean lies to his daughter saying that he has to go away on business for a few days, but the girl knows the truth and rushes him to get him to leave soon. After her father leaves, the girl starts planning how she's going to help with the case and decides to dress as a man, going out with her new look and walking to the fire station downtown. When she arrives at the place, Georgia is delighted and climbs into the truck while imagining herself fighting fires, but she ends up activating the horn and attracts Sean's attention, who asks her to get together with the other volunteers. With the team complete, Sean says he will be the captain and the mayor introduces the volunteers, who are nothing like the fire leader asked for. Instead of a chemist and a driver, Jimmy recruited a self-taught physicist called Ricardo and Jim, a teenage taxi driver. When he sees that there is an extra recruit, Sean asks who he is and Georgia introduces herself as John, a firefighter from another town who has come to help. As he claims to have experience, Jimmy advises the captain to take on the recruit and Sean gives in. Although his team is far from ideal, the fire alarm soon sounds and the captain leads the team to the first incident. As they drive through the city streets, Sean says they can't waste any time and Jim tells him not to worry, speeding up and driving in the opposite direction to cut across the road. Due to the absurd speed, Georgia's mustache ends up detached and ends up in the back of the truck, forcing the girl to get out of her seat and balance on the vehicle to retrieve the object. At that moment, Jim makes a sharp turn and Georgia hangs out of the truck, almost being smashed against the wall as the driver takes a shortcut down a narrow alley. When they get back on the road, Sean forbids the team to take any new shortcuts and Jim ends up passing out, falling asleep at the wheel while they are still on the wrong side of the road. After a few seconds, the man regains consciousness and makes one last, not very smooth turn, arriving at the theater earlier than planned. There, the team finds the same purple smoke coming from the top of the building and they go to talk to the police captain who says the building is empty. With this confirmation, Sean says it's time for action and asks John to extend the hose. Despite spending the last 10 years training, Georgia doesn't know how to regulate the water pressure and begins to rock back and forth until she is thrown to the ground. To prevent the situation from getting even more out of hand, Sean jumps on the hose and stops the water flowing, getting into a fight with John. With no time to lose, the captain decides to let it go and asks Ricardo to collect a sample of the smoke. Panicked, the man tries to run back home and ends up hitting the truck head-on, blacking out instantly. With one man less, Sean says that all the firefighters who entered the burning theaters have disappeared, saying that they must stay outside watering until the fire is out. Just when it looks like things are going to start working out, Jim faints and falls headfirst into the controls of the truck, causing the ladder to extend until it throws Sean and Georgia into the theater. There, the captain says that this wasn't the plan and that they should leave as soon as possible, but as soon as he turns around, Georgia sees something passing in the mist and decides to go after it. Even without a mask, the girl runs through the smoke in search of the arsonist who suddenly appears behind her. Shrouded in mist, the villain says he wasn't expecting new firefighters and throws a glass sphere in the girl's direction, turning on a gramophone that plays suspenseful music. At that moment, Sean appears and manages to fend off the arsonist, then runs for the exit. Even though she's out of breath, Georgia picks up the glass sphere on the floor and only then looks for the exit, which makes Sean even angrier. After all the confusion, he goes to talk to the team and asks why Jim fell asleep, discovering that he faints every time his emotions get the better of him. Despite this, Sean is even more upset with John who lied about having experience, saying that he no longer wants him as a member of the team. At that moment, the police captain appears and says that the fire has already been extinguished, saying that the firefighters are free to go in and carry out an investigation. Upset, Georgia goes after her father and apologizes for lying, saying that being a firefighter has always been her dream and promising not to let him down again. Even though he's upset, Sean decides to forgive the newcomer and invites him to investigate the theater. On stage, the two realize that everything has been burned, but that for some reason, the objects retain their original shape, despite turning to dust quite easily. Analyzing the environment, Georgia finds the point of impact and realizes that the fire was started from the stage, implying that the arsonist sees himself as an artist. The girl then shows her the glass sphere that the arsonist threw at her and says that it must be the explosive that started the fire, making Sean excited about the discovery. Outside, the captain goes to talk to the mayor and discovers that he has organized a press conference to promote himself. Realizing this, Georgia talks to her father and says that Jimmy could be the arsonist, but Sean doesn't think he's guilty and says that the rookie is jumping to conclusions. After the conversation, Sean asks John to go home and walks off in the direction of the subway. At that moment, Georgia realizes that she didn't think of how to get there before her father and runs home in desperation, asking Amber to distract Sean while she climbs through the bedroom window. The next morning, Georgia convinces her father to take Amber to work and takes her roller skates to the fire station, holding onto a truck to get to the fire station before he does. When Sean arrives, Georgia tells him that Ricardo has managed to discover some of the elements inside the sphere, but that he can't analyze it completely because the glass is unbreakable. In addition, the girl shows the box of evidence and tells him that there is now only one theater on Broadway that hasn't been attacked yet. While the police prepare a siege of the place, Sean takes the opportunity to train the rookie in firefighting, but the flames are too hot and melt Georgia's makeup, forcing her to run away from her father. In the next stage, Sean takes his daughter to the rescue simulation, but the girl gets too excited and ends up going in too early, being hit when the door explodes. Sean then says that firefighters should be prudent and think before they act, claiming that she is confusing courage with stupidity. Despite her failures, Georgia learns quickly and manages to make progress in just a few hours. When it gets dark, the firemen go to the last theater and find the great singer Laura Devine rehearsing on stage. Sean then asks why the police captain didn't evacuate the theater and he replies that he tried, but every time Laura went back to rehearse. Wanting to get information, Sean goes to talk to the singer and asks John to talk to Pauline, Laura's newly hired personal assistant. While talking, Georgia can't find out anything relevant, only that Pauline has been working on Broadway for over 20 years but has never been successful. On stage, Sean tries to ask Laura to leave the theater, but the woman refuses and orders Pauline to pull her back. Despite her assistant's best efforts, the rope mechanism can't support Laura's weight and she ends up falling on stage. Feeling guilty, Pauline sits down on the stairs and begins to mourn. Wanting to motivate her, Georgia tells her never to give up on her dreams and Pauline replies that it's easier for men. To prove her wrong, Georgia reveals her true identity and tells of her plan to become the first female firefighter in history. While talking to Pauline, Georgia sees the mayor entering the theater and decides to go after him, following him to his dressing room. There, the girl sees Jimmy playing the piano and realizes it's the same tune the arsonist played when he threw the sphere at her, confirming that he is the criminal. Suddenly, Sean appears behind Georgia, who is startled by a blow to her father's neck. After recovering, the girl says they should get back to the fire station as soon as possible and uses the disc that was in the evidence to test it, discovering that the sphere reacts to sound. Suddenly, the glass begins to crack and the sphere explodes at a certain point in the song, sending everyone looking at the object into a hallucination. Realizing that the fire is spreading, Georgia asks Ricardo to take everyone outside and uses the fire extinguisher to put out the flames. Now that they know how the arsonist activates the spheres, the firefighters ask the police to evacuate the city center and leave for Laura's theater. In place, Sean leads his team who position all the hoses pointing towards the stage, which is where the arsonist usually stands. With everything ready, Georgia goes outside to wait for the attack when Pauline calls her. Excited, the girl says that she has listened to Georgia's advice and has decided to quit her job to follow her dream, saying that she will just take her bag inside the theater and then leave. As soon as Pauline enters, the alarm starts ringing and the police captain appears, saying that the fire is not concentrated on the stage this time, but spread throughout the theater. Worried about Pauline, Georgia warns him that there is still a civilian inside the theater and Sean decides to go in with his team to rescue her. Using a hose to avoid getting lost, Georgia follows a direction until she finds Pauline unconscious. To help her friend, the aspiring firefighter starts dragging her to the exit when the ground gives way underneath them, causing Pauline to fall into the flames without Georgia being able to save her. Just then, Sean appears and stops the newcomer from going down after her, saying that it's too late and ordering him to leave the building. Very upset, Georgia says that she wanted to become a firefighter to save people, but that she failed at her first attempt. To comfort her, Sean tells her that after being appointed captain, he went to attend to a fire in an apartment. With a couple trapped inside the building, Sean and his team cut through the walls and tried to rescue them, but despite their efforts, the mission failed. Despite being devastated, Sean says that he needed to get over it for his daughter and that real firefighters need to accept that bad things happen. As soon as he finishes the story, Jimmy walks in and congratulates Sean on saving the auditorium. Confused, Georgia says that a life has been lost and that the arsonist is still at large, but the mayor ignores this and says that he will pass the investigation on to the police, as well as stating that there are no more theaters for the criminal to burn down. Sean then says that he can't do that and that they need to find the missing firefighters, but Jimmy insists that the police will take care of it. After the mayor leaves, the two agree that his attitude was suspicious and decide to follow him, catching the moment he enters the dressing room. Wanting to find out what he's up to, the two try to break down the door and fail miserably. Determined to get inside, Sean pulls away to make another attempt, but Jimmy hears him approaching and opens the door, causing the firemen to go straight through and collide with Laura. As a result of the impact, the two discover a secret passage in the ground and roll down a flight of stairs until they reach the subway. Following the two, Georgia arrives in the tunnel and accuses the mayor of being the arsonist, arguing that he was always in the theater. Laura then reveals that she and the mayor are engaged and that's why he always hangs around. While the humans are talking, Amber finds a fireman's hat and warns Sean, who suspects that the firefighting team is there. Following the tracks, father and daughter arrive at a door at the end of the line, discovering the arsonist's laboratory. Investigating the place, Georgia discovers that the criminal has been rejected from every theater on Broadway and has a PhD in chemistry. Looking for more clues, Georgia finds a pamphlet talking about the arsonist's real final plan, an explosion from the top of the Chrysler building, a new skyscraper being built in the city. While they read the flyer, Amber finds the fireman just below and Sean celebrates with John, saying how proud he is of him. Seizing the opportunity, Georgia removes her disguise and reveals her true identity, hoping that her father will be proud of her too. Despite this, Sean doesn't seem happy at all and feels as if he has been tricked, refusing to allow his daughter to continue working in firefighting. Confused, Georgia asks why and says that she drew her blood as a firefighter, but Sean denies it, revealing that he is not her father. Out of options, the man reveals that the couple he couldn't save were Georgia's real parents. Despite not rescuing them, Sean managed to get the couple's daughter back, promising that he would protect the girl with his own life. The man then tells her that if she becomes a firefighter, she will be taking many risks and he will no longer be able to keep his promise. While Georgia is processing the information, the arsonist throws a bomb between the two of them and manages to hypnotize Sean. After the explosion, the criminal approaches and attacks Amber, revealing himself to be Pauline, who faked her own elimination. With Georgia on the ground, the villain tells her that the two are enemies of society and says that they should burn down the city together, inviting the aspiring firefighter. Obviously, Georgia refuses and Pauline activates a cloud of toxic smoke that begins to cover Sean, leaving soon after. To save him, Georgia runs to the laboratory and tries to break down the door, but it doesn't work and she has the idea of removing the pipe at the top. Now that there's no more gas coming in, she goes into the lab and rescues Sean, who wakes up after getting some fresh air. After being saved by his daughter, Sean recognizes that he was wrong and asks her to go after Pauline while he helps the other firefighters. Together with Jim and Ricardo, Georgia chases the arsonist's car to the building under construction. When she arrives at the place, Pauline takes the freight elevator and Georgia jumps after her, hanging onto a rope until she reaches the top. On the top floor of the building, Pauline unloads all her bombs into a gas pipe and turns the valve until it pressurizes. With her keyboard, the woman uses a hook to get to the top of the beams while Georgia climbs trying to get out of the elevator. Just then, Sean arrives and realizes where Georgia is, but as there is only one elevator in the building and the stairs have not yet been finished, he has no way of getting up there to help. When the pressure is finally high enough, the pipes in the building explode and the chemical grenades fly out of the windows, scattering all over the city. To help his daughter, Sean starts looking around and sees a building across the street. With a rope and a hook, the man climbs up to the terrace of the building and tries to throw his improvised spear, but ends up missing. At that moment, Georgia finishes climbing the elevator and Pauline starts the music to activate the bombs, making them light up. Racing against time, Georgia sees where Pauline is and starts to run towards her, but she remembers Sean's lessons about thinking before acting and starts to come up with a plan. So the young woman comes up with the idea of turning off the power to the amplifier and starts looking for the socket. As soon as she locates the object, Georgia plans a route and springs into action, running up the ladders and pulleys until she reaches the wire. To help his daughter, Sean tries to throw the hook again and this time he hits it, but the cable ends up coming loose from his hand and he has no way of getting to the other side. At that moment, Georgia removes the power cable and stops Pauline's music on the last chord, preventing the city from exploding. Determined to get revenge, the villain crosses the construction site on a zipline and hits the firefighter in the chest, causing her to fall out of the building. Luckily, Georgia manages to grab onto one of the power cables and hangs on to the outside. Wanting to knock her down, Pauline stands on the edge of the building and starts pulling on the power cable. Suddenly she becomes unbalanced and falls, forcing Georgia to hold her up. With the two about to slip, Jim reaches Sean with a cab and together they jump to the other building, managing to pull the two girls out before it's too late. After preventing the destruction of New York, Sean goes to Georgia and delivers a box with some belongings he managed to save from her biological parents. Even happy with the gift, the girl says that Sean will always be her real father and hugs him. At the commemoration ceremony, the mayor congratulates the firefighters for saving the city and asks Sean to give them each a gold medal, symbolizing their bravery and determination as real firefighters.